Does anybody in the audience want to make a comment or a question? Yes.
Can I say that the two of you both seem to be working on the same tracks in a certain way, and some of it seems to be relating to like allegories for progressing in the world of poetry. And that was the thing that I saw that you had in common, but maybe I'm wrong. Can one of you speak to that?
Allegories for, what was that?
Life and poetry.
Oh,
well, for one, I actually am writing in sentences, which is, well, that's not addressing that, but in that way it's, but, I have a figure who's a poet, yes. And there are, I think that when I think about, I think more about groups than I do about particularly poetry. And so sometimes I use poetry or the group that is a group of poets that I maybe know and maybe I imagine to be the allegory for a general kind of group way in which we humans function within as individuals in groups and in social relations and things. So I think that would be my general response right now.
yeah, that's really well said. I mean, I think I'm also just interested in group dynamics in general, whether they're especially working groups. I guess at some point, my writing of this book was informed. I started reading Roberto Bolaño's Savage Detectives, which of course, as you know, is completely centered around this, scene of poets in Mexico City. And I was struck by that because it was set in the 70s, but could be completely translated to today. And I think it's just, I think that I was in this interview that I was writing, I was trying to kind of, I was trying to kind of get into the head of a character who had been kind of nameless in a sense, and had been really just kind of one of a number, one of a group, and very much one of a community and operating communally. And there's a real intensity to that that she was able to go to. But then I wanted to kind of take a step back and take her out of that and have her actually come out as an individual and kind of comment on all of that. I was interested in just like all the kind of layers and kind of like subterranean and almost like speculative kinds of elements in the piece that you read. And just, I mean, it's really interesting that it's a poet who's kind of drawing you into these spaces.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was curious to hear more about that.
I think I sort of, I'm not exactly sure what this piece is doing. It's very much in progress, but I feel like what I'm doing is setting up scenarios for myself that I'll like write through, and I don't necessarily go to it with a clear idea of what is going to happen or where I'm going to go, but I decided that levels that would include a subterranean, or that I would go into as many levels as would be possible, even not in human form. Like that, what would be, just to try to expand the scope of what an individual could possibly do if I could just kind of throw them into a circumstance or something. And so, yeah, somehow it ended up that like an entire city could just exist underneath the sea. Why not? I don't know. I'm just sort of like, I've taken cues, I was mentioning earlier, I've taken cues from video games, prompts for video games, which includes levels, sort of, so that's like, I took some of that, and cinematic cues, things like that, so.
Yeah, it kind of made me think a little about, like, you know, the allegorical descent of the poet into hell or something.
Right.
So that looks a lot like, you know, the life we live today. Yes?
Can you say a bit more about the ambient partners recording things that don't have to be played again?
Yeah.
Recording things they're meant to be recorded, and that's all.
Yeah, meant to be recorded. Yeah, I guess that's kind of like their, as characters, they're kind of like a perverse little group. They like to, they're a little bit absurd and they like to play around with things. So that could have been a statement they could have easily tossed off. But I guess the way I think of it is that they're purists in a way, and in a way they're kind of, that statement kind of speaks to their absolute commitment to doing something that they believe in. This kind of musical recording or noise recording that really isn't going to appeal to many people at all, but that they do believe that it's significant, and that it's enough that the activity was just done. It's enough that it was done, and as far as living on posterity-wise, it doesn't matter that much. It's more about the activity, and it reminds me a little of. I resisted watching Jacques Tati's Traffic for a while, but I did finally watch it after I finished writing this thing about automobiles, and it's a really great movie. So as Jacques Tati uses a lot of extras, and most of his, other than himself as the main character, he uses a lot of no-name extras as actors, and there's a lot of crowd scenes. And in the movie Traffic, there's actually more like 5 kind of main characters, but they hardly act. They're just kind of placed in situations, and But I was really struck by there's this really kind of moving interview that's done with 5 principal actors, and Tati's not there, and the interviewer kind of asks each one of them how it was, being on the film. And there's this female actress who's British, and it's pretty clear that she was really hoping that this movie would kind of be her big break. And it's pretty clear that she was hoping she had been discovered by Tati, and that she was going to be like the start of her big career. And you kind of see the disappointment in her face. And then this other character who's this kind of happy-go-lucky character, that's who he plays. He just kind of says, he's like, it doesn't really matter. The point is that, we made this film and we had fun doing it, and that's all that really matters. Then he kind of takes a sip of wine and he goes on. It's very French. But there's kind of like that spirit of just a sort of, being in the moment and not really getting too attached to objects and posterity and products.
It would be a scandal that someone would have an experience and refuse to share it with someone, right?
Yeah.
Which is what, I mean, but if I kept a diary, no one would complain that, like, you're a writer, why do you refuse to publish it, or at least post it?
Yeah.
elements of it on Facebook so that we know that your experience was actually occurred.
Right, because then it's real,
Right, whereas.
because they even like it.
Yeah. Whereas the telling of the story that something did occur, and I was there, but the content maybe doesn't matter because that's my private subjective experience, which seems like a slightly more of a, whereas your first novel is more of a court novel in terms of the genre you seem to be playing with. And you still have a collective, you have a group, it's coterie.
Yeah.
But they seem to be, the struggle there is how do they break from, well, they're maybe slightly younger in their development as artists, and how do they break into the world, moving from some sort of more private or shared experience and articulate it in some sort of new fashion. I mean, it's a very different, it's a, you know, I read it as a novel of the 90s, like Coming of Age in a .com world, where you would double click on something in order to know that it, in order to make it real, you need a second click.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's well put. Yeah, yeah, privacy. I mean, it's funny because the band does, you know, they start out and they go through different phases of extreme privacy and extreme public exposure, where they are, you know, Facebooking and posting daily on websites and picking fights intentionally with other band members so that they can generate publicity. So they go through those kind of phases. They are they kind of function a little bit like, you know, they're kind of like allegorical characters of the times. They kind of move through these different cultural currents and trends. And then there's also this kind of partly this kind of extreme privacy that's also has a little bit of theatrical element to it, where there is this one section or episode that's kind of based on the legend of the band Kraftwerk, where they completely hold themselves up in their compound, and but it's a very public kind of privacy where everybody knows that, and they even make a point of only being available by phone at a certain hour, one time a week, so that it's, you know, it kind of adds to their air of mystique. Yeah, I mean, I think that is kind of just it is kind of a basic struggle, I think, for anybody, especially I think writers, but I think anybody who does art is going to feel that kind of pull between, you know, needing extreme space and privacy to actually produce and to maybe go to some of the subterranean places that one needs to go to, but then also needing a connection to the world. So I think, yeah, I think maybe both books kind of speak to that.
Can I ask
time for one more thing?
Oh, does anybody else want to? I was going to ask, I really love the structures of your books, and I wanted to ask you about the centerpiece of this new book, and the radio guy and the opera singer and the station master section, which kind of takes a whole detour, and then we come back to the ambient Parkers. And I seem to remember in your first book as well, there was somewhere in the middle, there was this kind of, I had this kind of euphoric culminating moment where Pamela and Pamela's something just like structurally happened there. And then I experienced that again in a much extended form, sort of with the station master. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah,
that's not a question, really.
No, no. Actually, you completely just described my struggle with it. Yeah, it was actually for some reason. Yeah, for some reason, both times I've ended up gravitating towards a structure where there's a climax right in the middle, and I'm not really sure where it's going to go, but I just know that I want the climax to happen in the middle, because I guess I guess I'm kind of just very interested in turning points, the idea of a turning point. And what's really scary is I can get to that climactic turning point and then I don't know where the hell it's going to go, because then I feel like something really does need to turn. But yeah, that's, maybe there's something symphonic about it, but that really draws me to it, to have this kind of almost like a balance or a symmetry or an anti-symmetry between moving towards something and then having this quite intense climax and then the aftermath after this. I guess that's why I think it's the novel. It's just, that's what the novel is for me, it's a novel is something that moves through time. That's the form of it, and so, you know, you need to have, it's the way to express change, and changes in character and such. So, are you writing a novel?
I don't know,
Is
but
that a
that's a
novel?
novel. I'm not sure yet.
It's a quest. If you take the video game, it's a quest narrative.
Yeah, it is a question.
It's like what was the piece you did at Knesset, the orgy?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, it's a quest for the individual to find the coterie.
Yeah, it is a quest narrative.
I mean, not necessarily an orgy, but you know.
The video gaming, the gaming aspect of it also has that quest. Well, yeah.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.